My pistol competition setup this week on Mail Call Mondays. Mail Call Mondays is brought to you by MDT. If you need a chassis system for your precision rifle, check out MDTTac.com. I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about pretty much anything firearms related. And this Monday we have a question from Brandon, and Brandon asks, for pistol competition, what will be your ideal setup? Belt, holster, mag pouches, firearm, red dot, or irons? I'm getting into the sport first comp this Saturday, and I'm not wanting to buy a bunch of gear to try just to find out I don't like it and have to spend much more before the next match. Well, Brandon, that's a great question, and it's a great philosophy. Unfortunately, when you get into any kind of competition, you always end up buying more gear than you intended. It's great to go by that philosophy of buy once, cry once, but the reality is you'll get into competition and you'll find what works for you, and then you'll find what doesn't work for you, and then you'll sideline gear and you'll buy stuff, and then the next competition you'll buy something else, and then the next season you'll buy something else, and that's just the nature of the beast. So we're going to go over a couple of different items that I have here, and we're going to kind of frame this kind of broadly, because what gear you use and what is best will greatly depend on specifically what handgun competition you're entering into, because there are very different rules between USPSA and IDPA and 3-gun, etc. So I'm going to assume that you are shooting either IDPA or USPSA. So there are slightly different rules between the two, but the rig that I use, that I'm going to cover here in a minute, is designed to be legal for both Steel Challenge, which falls under USPSA rules, and IDPA, because I shoot both competitions and I didn't want to train on two different types of rigs. There are some rules that allow me to do things slightly different in Steel Challenge than I would in IDPA, and obviously in Steel Challenge I don't have to wear a concealment rig that conceals all my gear like I have to in IDPA. So first I'm going to cover the gun, because the gun decides what division you shoot in. What division you shoot in decides what rig you can run to hold that gun. So the gun that I chose for this season is the Sig Sauer P320 X5 Legion. There are a couple of reasons for this. First of all, I'm not sponsored by Sig Sauer. I kind of wish I was, but I don't shoot handgun competition at that level where I can really pull sponsors quite yet. The X5 Legion has some benefits over the standard X5, and pretty much I don't see the X5 in stock anywhere. It seems to be the Legion is the one that's in stock. So I have a bunch of different P320s, and the P320 is a fairly modular handgun. So I could have set a P320 up to be very similar to this, but in the end, the Legion was the more competitive way to go, and that's mainly because of the weight of the handgun. Out of the box, this thing is 43.5 ounces, which actually is a little bit too heavy for some divisions, but I decided I was most likely going to shoot in carry optics. Now, I just had my first match with the optic attached to this before then. In IDPA, I was shooting in ESP, Enhanced Service Pistol, with my iron sights on this handgun. Technically, the handgun was half an ounce too heavy for ESP. ESP, if I remember right, tops out at 43 ounces. So I would have had to pull the internal weight out of the handgun to be able to make weight for ESP. I also could have removed the magwell, but since ESP allows a magwell in an IDPA, you do have to do reloads on the clock. It would have made more sense to leave the magwell and pull the internal grip weight to be able to make weight. However, jumping up to carry optics and putting the optic on it, I now move up to 45 ounces being the max weight, and this works out just fine, making weight for that with the magwell and the internal weight. So this is one of the heaviest guns that can compete in carry optics. And since we are just running standard 147 grain 9mm through this guy, the extra weight really helps me out there. The gun is flat shooting. It just tracks perfectly on target, so your splits are very, very, very quick. It has a very lightweight trigger. The trigger that comes on the Legion is lighter weight than the standard P320 trigger. I will throw a scale on it. I don't remember what exactly it came out of the box, but before we do the full review on it, I'll go ahead and throw a scale on it and give you guys an idea what the exact pull weight is. But it's somewhere in that 3 to 4 pound range, so it's fairly light, fairly crisp, really nice overall trigger that I have not had to do anything with. The only other thing that I've done to this gun is I swapped in the 11-pound recoil spring that it came with. So it actually came with 2 recoil springs. So I have the lighter of the 2 in here. And I added Talon grip tape to the grip. The grip texture on the TXG frame is just a little too slick for my liking. The Talon grip tape is very, very aggressive, and it really locks the gun in my hand. In fact, so much so that I have had to be careful on my draw, because if I don't lock in exactly where I want my hand when I draw the handgun, it is not easy to adjust on the way to the target. Typically, even on rough Glock texture, when I'm coming up to the target, I can milk my grip a little bit and let the gun fall back into its correct spot as I'm coming up. With the Talon grip tape, I can't do that, because even if I loosen up on my grip, the handgun really stays stuck to my hand. So it's some really good stuff. I generally don't run any sticky tack or any of the grip assist agents that you see some people put on their hands, because this thing is just really so sticky with the grip tape already on it. My hands don't sweat very much to begin with, so I don't have problems with that. If you do, then you may need those little bit of additional assists. So that is the gun overall. There is one addition that I made. The Legion comes with these special Legion base pads. They're really nice aluminum extended base pads that allow you to run the 17-round magazines with the magwell. Apparently the 21-round magazines that come standard with the X5 and some of the other guns that are out there, like the M17, those are too long for the box, I believe, just a hair. So to make it legal for a wider variety of competitions, they went with shorter aluminum base pads that are supposed to just be long enough to seat the magazines in the mag funnel. What I found is they're actually just a hair too short, and occasionally when you're on the clock and you drive that mag in, if you have your hand cupped just a little bit instead of really going flat, then you may not fully get them to seat. So what I did is I went ahead and bought a set of Gray Guns base pads. They're just slightly longer than the Legion base pads that come with it. The way they're contoured, they will also work in a standard P320, which the Legion base pads do not. They will not fit in a standard P320. And then lastly, the Gray Guns base pads have little scallops here on the side. So when you do an administrative load, you can still grab a hold of it and pull to make sure that your magazine is seated before you start. And that is kind of really important, to make sure that mag is seated, so when you get that first shot, you don't have a magazine fall out instead of feeding the next round. So one huge bonus for the Gray Guns base pads. Since Gray Guns is closely aligned with Sig Sauer, I'm not sure why they didn't actually just go with these in the box instead of going with a different outside company to produce the Legion base pads for them. So one of these days I'm actually going to find out the answer to that. Maybe it's an economy of scale thing, or maybe these just weren't ready when the Legion had to ship. But these are really nice pads. They even have a little grid on them to mark the magazines, which I have not done so yet on these. But really great product overall. So since I am running carry optics, then I really could have run a more race-oriented holster for Steel Challenge, but I decided to go with this holster here, which is a double alpha holster, and it actually has a rather strange name to it. It is the IDPA PDR Pro 2. So rather long name to it, but it is designed specifically to be IDPA legal, which is kind of important because IDPA is the more restrictive of the two. And this is a Carry Optics legal holster. They don't really give you any additional allowances in Carry Optics versus production or ESP, etc. So this holster works for it. It runs the gun close enough to my body that you can't get the 3/4 inch dowel between the gun and my body. It sets the height of the handgun correctly. You can't have it too low for IDPA. And the rake is adjustable on it. I have it really almost straight up and down. I prefer an almost straight draw. For carry, then you tend to like to have that, they call it an FBI cant, where the handgun's tilted forward because it keeps the butt from sticking out as far. When you are in competition, though, you don't care really about concealment. You care about dropping your hand to the handgun, and so I like a straight draw because it aligns that grip a little bit more. I don't have to break my wrist to be able to get the handgun. When I do an FBI cant, I have to run the gun further back just because of my body mechanics. So a straight grip, as you run the gun farther forward towards the center line, it becomes straighter and straighter, and then when you come in front of the iliac crest, that little hip bone there, then you start to cant the muzzle the opposite direction so your hand can address it quickly. It's just a wrist body mechanics angle. This does allow you to adjust it. Additionally, it has this really neat carrier here that stabilizes the gun really, really well. There are adjustable spacers in here so you can take them out or add them to get the appropriate belt width. Since I am running IDPA, then the belt has to go through my belt loops. So I am not running a double belt setup. If I was running this solely for Steel Challenge, then I would run a double belt setup where I have a loop Velcro belt on the inside, and this would be a much, much stiffer belt with hook Velcro on the inside of the belt. And that is just simply because when I get to the range, I can have everything set up, mag pouches locked in, holster locked in, everything in its exact place. Grab the belt, unhook it, wrap it around my waist over that inner belt, snap it, and everything stays exactly where it is. For my training belts, for my actual duty belt for work, the holster stays locked into one position. When I put the belt on, I will align the holster with where it needs to be on my hip, and then I'll wrap the belt around and then snap the belt. So every time the holster is exactly in the same place. When you're running a belt setup like this for IDPA, then I have to go ahead and take off whatever belt I'm wearing to the range. I also have to take off my appendix rig that I carry every day because that's not legal for IDPA. Put that in the car, and then I have to take this belt out, and I usually keep it just like it is with everything attached so I know where everything is at. And I have to remove the belt and remove all the pouches from it, remove the holster from it, and then start threading it through my belt loops and thread the mag pouches on, and then finally thread the holster on, and then fasten the belt. It's a huge pain in the butt, but that's what the rules allow. You can only skip one belt loop. And thankfully this setup I really don't have to skip any belt loops, and in fact I usually wear 511 jeans whenever I'm competing. They just are comfortable for me. They're nice and stretchy, they're casual, they're non-tactical. Again, not sponsored by 511. I've stopped wearing Levi's. I prefer jeans a lot of times, and these work very well. But the place the belt loops are spaced out on them, I end up with one belt loop right here in the fork of the holster to help stabilize it and lock the holster in, and that keeps the holster, it can only really move 3/4 of an inch forward or 3/4 of an inch back from the position I have it locked in. So it prevents it from moving very far if I'm moving aggressively on the stage. The mag pouches, these are Double Alpha's IDPA mag pouches. They are the closest thing to a full race mag pouch, but still being IDPA legal. Again, this is a game. IDPA is not training. It's not practice for a gunfight on the street. It is a game. As much as some people really want to make it into something it's not, it is a game. So I am running gear to play the game. So I want to get that across just before anybody says, oh, you know, you wouldn't wear these on the street. No, you're correct. I wouldn't even wear these in a duty capacity because of the way the retention is set up on them. I think it's too easy to get the magazines out. But the magazines only have to stay in the pouch for a limited amount of movement while I am on an IDPA course. And the way I have this set up is as they go back, the tension increases. Because these are adjustable tension. You have to use an Allen key because that's one of the rules for IDPA. You can't have the external adjustment wheels that the full race pouches have on them. But I adjust them with the Allen key for the magazines that I am running, and the first pouch is a little bit looser than the next pouches as they go back. Again, IDPA, you are only allowed 3 mag pouches on your belt. The rearmost mag pouch is for your magazine that you are going to load at the start. So this really doesn't count. Then this one is going to be the next magazine that you load from. And since you're only allowed 10 rounds in your magazines for IDPA, then you get to that next magazine pretty quick. So I'm not worried about running too far and bouncing the magazine out. So it holds it just where I want to, but I can adjust it to have increased tension if I ever have a problem with a magazine jettisoning on the stage. But it's good to go the way it is right now. And I don't even have to think. When I access a magazine, it comes right out without any conscious effort. Now, all that is great, but it has to be supported by a belt. And as I mentioned, if I was not running IDPA, I would run a double belt setup. Double Alpha has some really nice ones. Blue Alpha Gear has one that I've used for training for quite some time. That is a more tactically oriented belt that also works very, very well. This is a Nextbelt. Nextbelt sent this out to me ages ago. I beat it up pretty bad. The buckle is all kind of rashed up now. The end of the belt is starting to fray, but it is stiff enough to do what I need to do for IDPA and still thread it through my belt loops. It also is a ratcheting type belt. So I have a little release down here that I have to push in to be able to take the belt apart. On the back side, it has this plastic ratchet track in it. You can trim the belt to different sizes, so it's a one size fits all out of the box, and then you cut it to fit you specifically, and then you really just simply thread the ends together, and you can hear it ratchet down as I thread it through. I really, really like this type of belt for this kind of competition. Since I have to run my belt loops, I have to be able to run it through and lace it in. This allows me to get the belt nice and tight. I can get everything locked in to where it's not going to move. And if at some point I start to feel that the rig is not as tight as it should be, I start to feel that gun sagging a little bit, I can boost it up and I can just squeeze it together another click or two just to tighten it down. So I don't know if it's the belt is relaxing, but usually after I put it on, after I walk around before the initial stage briefs, I'll generally have to notch it in just a click or two, but after that I don't have to adjust it anymore. It stays locked in, it's tight as can be. So that is a really slick deal, and we'll leave a link to that one down below. Like I said, Nextbelt sent this out to me. They have a little bit of an affiliate program, so if you click the link down below to Nextbelt and you pick one up, it helps us out just a little bit. They do have some different styles now. I'm going to try to pick up one of their appendix belts. They have one designed specifically for appendix carry, and we'll give you a full review on those and see how well that works. But that is the belt and the mag pouches. Now, as I said, there are different rules. I could run a little bit more race-oriented rig in Steel Challenge, but then you run into the problem of having to train for 2 different rigs. I'm trying to keep it simple and training just for one rig, and this is what I found works very well. Now, CompTac makes a holster called the International, that I also have one of those that is designed for the Glock. Those are very popular in both IDPA and in Steel Challenge, and they work very well as well. I just picked up this one for the SIG, and it happens to fit the Legion as well as the regular 320. And when I initially was looking for holsters, holster options for the Legion, because it's slightly longer than the P320 full, were a little bit tight. So that's the gun, that's the rig. One thing I didn't talk about is this is an old Competition Electronics Pocket Pro timer. This is actually my dry fire timer. I have the new version, which is a little bit better. It shows you more splits, more information on one screen, and that is what I actually take to the range when I'm shooting. A timer, be it a timer like this that you can clip on your belt or a timer on your smartphone, a shot timer is critical for training. Really, it helps you out in dry fire training because you can set par times and you can try to complete the task, whether it's draw, reload, etc., underneath the par time. So you'll get a beep to start and you'll get a beep when your par time ends. That is great. You can set them for random start so that when you're training on your own, I'll keep it clipped to the belt. I'll hit the button to start. I'll either start from the surrender if I'm training for Steel Challenge, or I'll start relaxed, arms down at the side for IDPA, and then it will go through a random timer and then it will start to beep on its own. So it really just helps you out there. You don't have to have a dedicated timer. A smartphone timer will work. They have apps that give you most of the functionality of a shot timer on an app. But I just find then you have to either strap the phone on your arm or on your, you have to do something with it. And then again, it's not dedicated. Somebody gives you a call, somebody sends you a text message in the middle of the string. It can goof things up. For me, the expense of the dedicated timer just gives me a little bit of added convenience of having it clipped on. It's fairly rugged. I don't have to worry about it being damaged, and I don't have to worry about the timer app being updated or switching it over to new phones, etc. These things last a very long time as long as you don't get them soaked out in the rain. So that is that setup. Now, I spoke mainly about the Sig Sauer P320. I liked all the features of the Legion. That's why I went with the Legion. But there really was a close second because I do carry Glocks off duty. I carry Glocks on duty. So I'm very, very tuned in to the Glock. The SIG actually makes me work a little bit more to make sure I'm dialing in that natural point of aim for the SIG and not for the Glock. The second runner-up was almost the Glock 34. And again, this is set up for carry optics competition. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is technically carry optics in IDPA, you can run a magwell. Carry optics in Steel Challenge, you cannot run the magwell. So you have to remove the magwell to run that. A lot of clubs will kind of let you fudge on that if you're just doing local club competitions because Steel Challenge, there is no reload on the clock. So other than just a little bit of added weight on the gun, the mag funnel is not giving me any competitive advantage in Steel Challenge. If somebody protests about it or something, then it's a very simple matter just to pull one screw and drop the magwell off and run it without the magwell. But again, since magwells are allowed in IDPA, and IDPA is where I'm going to be reloading on the clock, then the magwell is what I want on the gun. If I was going to go out and shoot a regular USPSA match where I was reloading on the clock, then I would have to remove the magwell, otherwise it's pretty much cheating. So just a point of reference there. Now on the Glock 34, the Glock 34 obviously does not come with a magwell on it, so I have a Dawson Precision Ice magwell on here. Adding the mag well creates a new problem because the magazines that come with the 34, since it's a Gen 5, have a little lip on the end of them, and that little lip will hang up on the mag well. Additionally, if you try to run just a regular base pad in here, you get into the same problem that we had when I was talking about the Legion base pads. You have to push into the mag well to seat them. So Dawson Precision, when you buy a Gen 5 ice magwell, they give you 3 base pads. Now, this magwell has been Cerakoted black. It was this silver color, which looks fine. I ran it that way for quite some time. It's still an attractive part, but I also run this for law enforcement classes, that kind of thing, so I prefer the flat black look on the gun. It doesn't, it makes it blend in a little bit more. It doesn't have it stand out, and it makes it look less like a race gun when I'm shooting it in a more tactically oriented environment. Now, the Dawson base pads allow me to have a little bit of extra hanging out there, so it's very easy to seat those pads on the clock. So that was a really nice added benefit, and that actually came when I ordered a set of Dawson sights for this thing. Now, since this is now running an optic, those sights have gone off, and I'm running regular Ameriglow suppressor height sights on here. And obviously this is a Trijicon SRO, and it has a C&H Precision MOS plate mounting the SRO onto the slide. The SRO has a much larger window than the Trijicon RMR. It's much more competition oriented. I'm really enjoying using this optic. I've run a couple of our handgun classes now, our handgun optics classes now, where I've loaned a student my 41 with the RMR, and so I use the 34 with the SRO to teach the class and to demo runs. And I really like this. It was a very hard decision for me to go with the X5 Legion over the 34 because the 34 just feels right. It feels slim. It feels slick. It just, it's very difficult to describe. The SIG X5 Legion is bulkier, but it feels more grounded. It does not move around. It doesn't feel as lively. The 34 is lighter. It points quicker, but it doesn't quite track as flat, I think, as the X5 Legion. So I'm going to finish out the season running the X5 Legion, but when we get to the season, you never know. I may end up going back to Glocks. This is really the first year that I have seriously gotten back into IDPA. I have shot Steel Challenge for quite a few years now, but I just kind of goof around in Steel Challenge. I haven't been shooting to be highly competitive. So this year I've really been trying to be a little bit more serious about my training and a little bit more serious about my competition. So the X5 Legion is the gun that I'm running for the foreseeable future. I'm trying not to change anything on the gun, because there is really a limited amount of things that I can change on the gun. The trigger is right where I want it, so I have no need to go in and start messing with the springs or messing with the trigger. And the only other thing that may switch around as we go deeper into the year is right now I'm using the Delta Point Pro on here. Leupold makes a solid optic. The Pro that I have here is a 7.5 MOA triangle on it. I'm not 100% sold on the triangle. I do have Springer Precision mounting plates that will allow me to put the Sig Sauer Romeo 3 on it whenever the Romeo 3 is again available and shipping. The Romeo 3 has a larger view, and it is really it's designed as an all-out competition optic, whereas, again, the Delta Point Pro is designed as a tactical optic. I originally picked it up and ran it on my duty gun for a little while before switching it over and running it on this setup. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention about the X5 that I am not pleased with is it has this loaded chamber indicator, which is really nothing more than a notch cut in the barrel hood. The problem with that is when you are running an optic like the Delta Point Pro, the pistol will vent gas through that notch, and I end up with a stripe of fouling right up the middle of the optic. Really not my favorite thing in the world. I ran a full match, no problem. I can still see through the optic just fine, but even from the shooter's view right now, I can see a V up through the middle of the field of view where it's blowing soot back on the lens of the optic. And that means the coatings on the front of that optic are probably not going to last for a very long time if I continually have to clean fouling off of them at the end of every match. Now, apparently, I have not talked to Sig Sauer customer service yet, but apparently if you call them and you complain, then they will allow you to send your gun in and they will replace the barrel with a non-LCI barrel. Now, we spoke with Sig Sauer optics reps at the SHOT Show, and the Romeo 2, they actually have a little bit of a cutout that they've been working with on the front of the optic to avoid that, and apparently the geometry of the Romeo 3 helps prevent that as well, and you shouldn't get the soot stripe down the middle with SIG optics that are designed specifically to avoid that. But when you're running other things like the Delta Point Pro, or possibly even if I put the Springer plate on here and mount a SRO to it, then I may run into that problem. So that's probably something I'm going to send back to Sig Sauer and remedy. Hopefully it's a quick turnaround, because if it's not, then I'm going to end up running my standard P320 RX in the next match, which I'm not greatly looking forward to after shooting this thing. I am not a world-class handgun shooter. I'm a tactical handgun shooter that is trying to wade my way up, or actually struggle my way up the ladder in handgun competition shooting. I really enjoy it. It's great fun, and a lot of what I do, although again, I compete in games, a lot of what you do in the game does actually translate over to skill on the street, and that's something that I have a vested interest in improving, because at some point it may end up the difference between life or death for me. So really nice thing there, and again, it's a great thing. I encourage anybody who is at least at an intermediate skill level with their handgun to go out and compete, because you will learn a lot about yourself. You'll learn a lot about stress management. And the really interesting thing is, a lot of us have alpha personalities, so we like doing what we're good at. We don't like doing what we're not good at. And a lot of times those competitions will put you in situations where you have to do things that you are not good at. And it shows you where the holes are in your practice routine. So again, a lot of fun there. Now, last thing I'm going to talk about here real quick before we go is this guy in front of me that has been causing a lot of hate and discontent on the internet. And this, of course, is the Glock 44, which is a 22 long rifle version of the Glock 19. So it is Glock 19 sized. It just happens to be chambered for 22, and because it's chambered for 22, it has a polymer slide with metal rails down here. The barrel is also set a little bit deeper in the slide. There's a little bit different geometry going on in here. However, the ergonomics of the grip and the trigger are exactly the same as a Glock 19. So it feels very nice. You have the same mag well down here as you have on a Gen 5 Glock 19. The magazines are the same size, so no problems with current magazine pouches that accept Glock 19 magazines. And you can actually take one of the Glock 44 magazines and insert them into a Glock 19. Friend of mine actually sent me a video where they put a 22 snap cap in the magazine, inserted it into a Glock 19, dropped the slide, and it actually fed the 22 snap cap into the barrel of the 19. Obviously, the cap just fell right out the muzzle, but it did actually work. So, kind of cool overall. This morning marked 1,800 rounds through the Glock 44. So we are well on our way to getting our review done. So expect to see that in the next week or two. I was hoping to have the threaded barrel in soon so we can run it suppressed a little bit, but we have run a huge amount of ammunition through it so far as different varieties of ammo, and so far it's fed everything. We haven't had any issues with cracking or ejector issues. There were some reports on the internet of the slide cracking and the extractor falling out. No problems with that whatsoever. I did shoot point aim, point at impact at 5 yards, which again, this is a defensive handgun trainer. This is not an accuracy, precision, long range, or even a competition handgun. This is a trainer. So if you shoot a lot of Glocks, then this saves you a lot of money because now you can shoot a Glock and shoot 22s. I have my boys out on Super Bowl Sunday. We were out at the range running this thing through its paces. And my oldest boy, who I'm transitioning over to a concealed carry style handgun, he was having a ton of fun just practicing his draws and shooting a plate rack with it. Now you'll notice that I have a Surefire X300 on here. There are a couple of reasons for it. The main reason is because we were running Blackhawk Omnivore holsters, myself and the 2 other testers that we were cycling the gun through. Most of us run tack lights on our guns, so being able to just run the Omnivore and have one gun with one light on it and being able to swap back and forth just makes things go a little bit quicker. The second reason for it is because this is a defensive handgun trainer. Most of the time a defensive handgun should have some form of weapon light on it. We are now to the point where there are quite a few varieties of compact weapon lights on it, so there's really not a lot of reason not to put a weapon light on your handgun. So of course I wanted to make sure that it did function 100% with a weapon light on it. I could have put the Surefire XC1 on it, or I could have put one of the smaller O-light lights, the Valkyrie, on it. But I went ahead and put the X300 on it so that it worked with our Omnivore holsters, and it also added a little bit of weight to the front of the gun. Hopefully, if a weapon light mounted to the gun was going to cause malfunctions, then the X300 will be heavy enough to cause malfunctions. Thankfully, that was not the case. I did run it about 500 rounds first with no light on it, and obviously it performed just fine with no light on it, and then performed just fine with the light on it. This light is now filthy. It's absolutely covered with vaporized lead all over the top of the barrel. So that is something that you'll want to keep in mind if you run it with a tack light on it. Maybe a good idea to put a piece of tape over the top of your light. If it's a light that you're switching back and forth between trainer and your center fire gun. Because now when I pull this guy off of here and I go ahead and drop it on to the 34, you can definitely see the difference in color, that there's a ton of nasty, ugly lead all over it, and there's barely any light coming out of the end of this because of all the stuff on it. So I'm gonna have a good job cleaning that off. So the full review on the Glock 44 will be coming very soon, that I promise. So that's it for this Mail Call Mondays. Hopefully you guys found it useful. If you have any questions or comments over anything that I've covered on this Mail Call Mondays, then drop it in the comments section down below. We will leave a link to all the links for everything that I have covered in the video down below. Because of YouTube's policies, you'll have to click that link and go back to our website, where we'll have all the rest of the stuff linked to. If you like the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and make sure you click that little bell icon to be notified when we release new videos. YouTube plays some funny games with the metrics, so hopefully clicking that icon will give you the best chance of knowing when we release new content. We have almost all of our SHOT Show videos up now, so make sure you check out the SHOT Show playlist and see if there's anything that interests you there. And until next time, get out and shoot.